All right, everyone, welcome to today's session on how to use your 2023 mental fitness and wellbeing diary. My name is Hadleigh Fischer, and I'm the founder of Resilience Agenda. And I'm really excited to have you all here today. Those of you who are watching on live, who are here to ask questions, and those of us in other time zones who might be joining us a bit later. Today's session is going to go for about 30 to 45 minutes. We're going to run through a whole lot of things about what our diary is all about and how you can use a simple paper planner to help improve your mental fitness. I want to start with just a little bit of background on what Resilience Agenda is all about and what our mental fitness message is all about. We're going to talk about different ways to use the diary. Some people ask us, well, hang on, how does a diary actually help me manage or improve my mental health? We're going to go through a little bit about what's inside the diary, what makes it unique, what makes it a really valuable tool and companion for the year ahead. And then we're just going to talk about mastering time. And I think a lot of people are overwhelmed at the moment, and I think a diary and some of these principles of mental fitness can be really valuable for just getting through the day with a bit more energy and a bit more focus. So we're really focusing on the things we want to. I know some people on this session today will already have their diary. Thank you so much for picking it up. We know that some other people are waiting until this session to get theirs or won't have theirs for a little while. So by the time this goes on replay, everything will be hopefully under control and you'll have your diary. So the Resilience Agenda story, what are we all about? The reason we started Resilience Agenda was because, 7 years ago, I wanted to take a more proactive and preventative and protective approach to mental health. I grew up in a family affected by poor mental health, and despite being about as close to as mental illness as you could be, I never thought it had anything to do with me. I didn't realize what I could do to protect my mental health or whether it was just something that was going to happen to me. And then I stumbled upon positive psychology, the science of well-being, the new research into neuroscience, and thought, hang on, this is great. There are things I can do to take care of my well-being and apply them each and every day. The problem was, though, that a lot of this language I thought was really inaccessible for a lot of people. Particularly as a guy, I thought, well, hang on, this is not really speaking to me. And so that's when we started using the term mental fitness. And with my friends, I went from being totally ignorant of mental health to suddenly wanting to talk about it openly, but people didn't care. But as soon as I started using the term mental fitness, people were like, hang on, what's that? What do you mean? And so this idea that we can look after our mental health just like we can our physical health, and that we can improve and build our mental fitness just like we can our physical fitness is such a powerful idea, because we know that encouraging people to look after their physical fitness and to build it and to stay engaged in it is something that's really helped change attitudes around physical health. Now we live longer, many of us are healthier as a result. The thing is, when it comes to mental fitness or mental health, it's still a bit of a taboo to talk about it. It's still unusual to work on your mental health. And what we're trying to do with mental fitness is give people this permission to openly talk about and openly work on their mental health, whether they've got a previous diagnosis or not. And I think that's the really exciting part. So what is mental fitness? Well, it's a mindset, process, and set of strategies that you can use to develop, maintain, and improve good mental health. Mental fitness is not for people who are in the depths of a mental health crisis. Rather, it's for people who are on their recovery journey and who are trying to maintain and improve and protect their mental health. Also, it's for people who have never ever had a diagnosis before, but who want to more actively do more in life. They want to contribute more. They want to work harder, but they don't want to be burnt out or to suffer the effects of chronic stress. And so the mindset of mental fitness is this idea that mental health can be improved, that things that we do in our lifestyles impact the way our mental health unfolds. Of course, circumstances matter. Of course, our genes matter. But we know that about 1/3 of the things that predict our well-being are within our control. We have a process that we can borrow from physical fitness. Physical fitness is not a thing that you do once and then you're fine. It's a lifelong project, and hopefully it's meaningful and enjoyable. And so what happens with physical fitness? You set goals. You get injured sometimes. You have setbacks. It helps to do it with other people. It's often more fun to do it with other people. You try and measure what's working and what's not working. And you try and adapt based on what's good for you and what's good for you as you get older. And so mental fitness is something that hopefully you can work on for the rest of your life. And then our strategies. Well, these are the things we can actually do, the things that we can think, the way we can modify our behaviors so that we can improve and give ourselves the best chance to protect our mental health. I think some people get disappointed when they try some of the activities of mental fitness and then they still feel sad or they still feel anxious. Well, it depends on the extent to which that's happening as to whether there's something going on from a medical perspective. But mental fitness is not a cure-all for all our ills. It just helps us to cope more proactively with what's happening in our lives. So, in your diary, you're going to discover the Mental Fitness Toolkit. And this is the core science of what we're all about. And we don't put any woo-woo. We don't put anything in the diary that's not backed by science and common sense. And so on the top line here, you'll see a lot of these things that you might have heard about related to physical health. Movement, exercise is important. Eating well is important. Getting enough sleep is important. But for a lot of people, that's one in one ear and out the other. What we want to share with you is some key insights that make these things really relevant for our mental health as well. Preventing burnout and managing chronic stress. So with movement, for example, science shows us that movement has as much of an effect as antidepressants do for mild to moderate depression. That's a really inspiring thing. So even just getting outside for a walk, I try and get out every single day, no matter how busy I am. It's just a habit that I've built, and it helps keep me healthy. Nutrition. Most of us eat well in order to look good or to weigh a certain amount. But we can also think about how we feel. Certain things that we eat can impact how we feel within hours. And that's one of the things that we like to share in the diary this year. Sleep is often the canary in the coal mine when it comes to our mental health and the signs that it might be deteriorating. So things like, well, how much coffee am I drinking? Am I drinking coffee too late in the day? What am I thinking about as I get into bed? These are the insights and the sort of really practical day-to-day things that we need to think about rather than just saying, get more sleep. Because one of the things that we often face is that we try to get to sleep, but we just can't. And so we have to try and put in these conditions that might help us get to sleep before we have a real issue. Connection and belonging. We don't do this alone. Mental fitness and life is not an individual game. And the number one predictor of well-being across the world is how much social support we have. Or rather, how much social support we might have were we to want it, were we to choose it. Who are our friends? Who are our connections? Our acquaintances. We have to prioritize our connection. We have to do meaningful things with other people in order to build those shared memories and to be a bit vulnerable with each other. And connection comes when we talk about our hopes and our goals and our dreams for life. And that includes talking about, hey, I want to improve my mental fitness. And of course, mindset. much of the 2023 diary is about how to improve our mindset. But the idea there is, what does failure mean to us? Is stress a motivator or a demotivator for us? And the way we approach the world is what the bottom line's about. This is our mental fitness framework. So optimism. Optimism is not believing that the future will be better. Our world's in a really tough state at the moment. It's simply believing that it can be better. And when we're struggling with our mental health, our vision becomes really narrow and we focus on only the negative things we can see in front of us. And we need to find ways to, okay, how can I look ahead to when things might be better? And what steps do I have to take now to try and get there? Mindfulness is simply paying attention to the world around us. That's just noticing more. It means when we're doing something like eating or spending quality time with someone or enjoying a great experience, we're fully there. So that experience gets locked away as something that we can really value. That means not being mindless, which is often around multitasking and doing things on our phones. Gratitude. Gratitude is a divisive one. A lot of people think, well, how can I be grateful when there's so many problems in the world? And how can I be grateful when there's so many problems in my life? Well, it's not about being grateful for everything. The key to gratitude is specific gratitude. And that means even if other things aren't going well, what are the one or two things that are, or at least that aren't going terribly today? And gratitude is not a trait, it's an action. We need to do gratitude. You can't just be grateful. You've constantly got to renew your reserves of gratitude. It's something you've got to do and show. And we can write down gratitude. We can thank people for things they've done for us. There's a lot of ways to be grateful. In the 2024 diary, we'll go into even more detail about that. Reframing is about using our minds and our reason and our intellect to regulate the impact of our emotions. As the February chapter in the diary explains, our thoughts are not facts. Our feelings are not facts. Our emotions are merely suggestions or warnings. And then it's up to our rational or our emotional mind to think about what to do. And that's what the ABC chapter is all about, where we can take a thought or a belief that's been stuck in our minds and think about it a new way. And then perspective is about how we can look at the world, look at our problems, look at our life in a new way. And one of the key questions to ask ourselves there is, well, how else could I think about this? Or how might this look to someone else? And just by asking yourself those questions, you start to get out of the little box you're in. And so the key with the diary and the key for our mental health is protecting our time and making time for what matters, for recovery, which is stress recovery, and to prevent things like burnout. When we talk about most people's values, they say, oh, my values are my work, my family, and my health. Most people say those things. The thing is, we need to allocate time for them. We need to have goals for these things. The thing is that most people don't have their health, especially their mental health, in their schedule. And that's why we put together a diary, so that it's a tool that a lot of people still use and love using, and combining it with reminders and inspiration about how to make mental fitness a part of an everyday life, even if you don't have a lot of time. And the key there is that we need to prioritize wellbeing time and put it into our calendars first before life gets in the way. So, how can we think about time just a little bit differently in the context of mental fitness? Well, we need life management principles, not just tactics or tips. We need the idea that well-being is important. It needs to go in our schedule. Just reading something in the newspaper once a week, it doesn't really fit into our lives. You might have heard the concept of work-life balance. Well, at Resilience Agenda, we prefer the idea of work-life integration. Because think about it, when you're trying to balance something, imagine yourself trying to balance on a seesaw or on a rope. It's really hard to balance, and you're always about to fall off. And that's because balance is not really realistic. You're always stressed, partly about the fact that you're not in balance. A more nuanced way to look at this is work-life integration. That means you seesaw between really hard periods of work and fully engaged rest. And by sort of sprinting and resting, we get more done and we feel better along the way, and it doesn't have as much of a negative impact on our well-being. And overwhelm doesn't come from having too much work. It comes from having too little rest and not recovering properly. If you have an amazing physical and mental fitness regime, you'll find that you're really able to get a lot more done. The thing is, a lot of us sort of go through life at this mid-level zone of energy where we're sort of half engaged with work and our families, and we're sort of half engaged with resting, but we're not really there. And that's what we're trying to inspire people to change. How can we slow down time? And I think one of the keys here is don't always try and fit more in. Try and fit in and prioritize what is most important. You know, people often say, well, how can I be more productive so I can do more? Well, why are you trying to do more? What is the point? And I think stepping back and asking yourself these questions is really important. There should be enough time in life for what is truly important if we plan it ahead and if we're flexible. And one of the things that I think is really important is the use of language. So, busy has come to be this, how are you? Oh, I'm fine, I'm busy. But I try not to use the term busy myself. I like to think of it as, well, I'm leading a full, useful, and meaningful life. What that means is when I'm busy and I say, hey, I'm busy, it means I've got too much to do and I need to reprioritize. When I say to myself or to others, I'm busy, what it means is I need to go and look at my schedule and my priorities. But when I'm not feeling that, I think, hey, I need to fill all my time. I'm filling it with useful and meaningful things. So they're just a couple of ideas that I wanted to share with you before we go on. But this is why you're here, to get more out of the diary itself, to learn about what's in it and different ways we can actually use it. So the diary itself is a really high quality diary. For those of you who are holding it in your hands currently, you'll know what I mean. One thing I'd invite you to do is to bend it back for a start. Bend it back. You almost can't break it, and that way it'll lay flat. So any page that you open it to, bend it back nicely. It lays flat really nicely. The diary is made with FSC certified paper. That's from the Forest Certification Council. And what that means is that the diary's paper comes from plantations and not old growth forests or rainforests. And we pay a bit extra to make sure that the paper is really high quality. You'll notice it's nice and thick as well. Ink marks don't go through. We're going to talk about all the mental fitness ideas that are in it. It's got a pleather cover, which is like a fake leather. So no animals are affected in the production of this. And yeah, it's pretty hard wearing. We've sold over 100,000 of these over the last 6 years or so, and we've not had a single one sent back because the diary falls apart, and it also wipes down nicely if you spill coffee or anything on the front like that, which is what I've done in the past. You've also noticed it's got the nice elastic band on the outside. That's for keeping everything in. And of course, it's got the two little ribbon bookmarkers, and I'll show you about how I use them in a moment. So what does a diary actually do? Well, it helps you remind yourself and to continually decide each and every day, hey, my mental health is really important. It's really hard to live a full and active life without good mental health, and that's what I want to protect if I can. That's important to us. We can figure out our top priorities because the online world, the world of people making requests of us, it all comes in seemingly so urgently. It's really important from time to time, and we recommend doing it once a week, to sit down and focus on, okay, what's really, really important here? Not just what's urgent, what's important. What's going to move the needle in my health? What's going to move the needle with my relationships, with my family? What's going to move the needle with that work project or that new job I need to find or booking that holiday? Because otherwise things get left to the last minute and that creates stress. There is no such thing as free time. Time gets crowded out, time gets used, and if you want to be unkind, time gets wasted unless it's planned. Now, that doesn't mean you have to constantly plan productive activities in your day. What it means is that having some structure to our day is really valuable. Now, a lot of people in certain types of jobs have structure that's given to them. One of the things that's contributed to some of the overwhelm since COVID has been working, for people working at home. Life is so unstructured in many ways. You get up whenever you want, you might start work whenever you want. And of course, those bookends of our day, commuting to work, the walk to the station, the cycling trip, whatever it might be, we're not doing those so much. And even when we come home, often we're exhausted. And, that's totally fine after a long day. And of course, it's totally fine to watch TV or to, muck around or whatever. But from a well-being perspective, the best use of time is what you wanted to do for it, not to be distracted. So if you plan to come home and watch 4 hours of Netflix and you feel great doing it and not guilty, then absolutely do it. But if you know that you're not, giving enough time to your kids or to exercise or to reading or whatever it might be, put that in your diary, and you can always cancel that appointment later with yourself. But just having it there is that reminder, oh, hang on, I needed to do that, because we forget. And when we're feeling tired and drained, we often make choices that, our better selves might not make. This is a surprising one. I've always valued freedom and the ability to do what I want. But what I'm learning is that structure and predictability are what gives flexibility its purpose. If everything's flexible, then there's no such thing as flexible anymore. But if you've got some routines, a certain bedtime, a certain time to catch up with some people, a certain time to start work, whatever it might be, a certain time to meditate, around those times, you can have a lot of flexibility. A lot of people want to manage their time, but there's a new school of thought that it's actually more productive to manage our energy levels. And what we mean by that is you often have time when you've got no energy, and you've often got no time when you're full of energy. So for example, you come home from work, you're exhausted after a long day, you've got a bit of time, maybe you've just put the kids to bed, but you just can't be bothered doing anything. Well, how can we make it so that we get through the day with more energy so that the evenings don't feel like that? Or how can it be that we get through to the weekend where we're really keen to go out and do something active and refreshing and not just, sit on the couch or sleep in because we haven't been sleeping well during the week. And so it's about thinking of the week, in this high level kind of way, rather than just taking things moment by moment. And of course, you can use the diary for what we suggest, which is to put your health values and your health commitments into the diary, week by week, month by month, and then work around that. Now, for some people, that might mean a daily activity that goes for an hour. If you're lucky enough to look after your well-being for an hour each day, that's great. For some people, it might be a 5-minute walk around the park at lunchtime. For some people, it might be, some deep breathing at mid-afternoon when you're starting to get tired. All these things help. And there's a whole bunch of ideas in your diary throughout the year for how to build these skills. You don't have to learn them all today. You don't have to learn them all in January. And that's why the diary is laid out the way it is, so that people can learn a small skill month by month, master it, and then learn something new. So what's actually inside? Well, after a couple of years of COVID, hopefully we can now start using our travel and holiday planner again. And what I like to do with this section is to look ahead to the year ahead. I like to block school holidays in here. I like to block my own holidays if I'm going on a holiday outside of school holidays. I like to put any visitors who are coming in here. Essentially, any interruption to my daily schedule or my regular work schedule goes in here. And so that means I need to be particularly conscious when I review this for my well-being coming up to that week. Because it's interruptions to our routine that often derail our best laid plans for our health. And some people like to put one of the bookmarkers in this annual planner so as they're getting a bit of a higher level view here of what's happening for the next 6 months. Of course, we have the weekly spread, and this is the main part of the diary. You'll notice that the whole week is laid out over 7 days, and we've got our weekend on the side. And we apologise to those people who would prefer us to have an equal number of days for the weekend as well. We just think the diary would be too squashed if we fit it in like that. You might also notice that we have left the times off the diary. And the reason why we do that is because with so many people working flexible hours these days, doing shift work, earlies and lates, we have a lot of people in the nursing and health professions who use the diary. It's up to them, or it's up to you to put the blocks in that work for you. Of course, in the top left, we've got our inspirational reminders and ideas. These aren't just quotes that tell you you can be anything and you can do anything. They're actually really practical and inspiring in many ways, and they make you think, which is the whole point. In the top right of the weekly spread, we've got our weekly goals. And this is a really important part of the spread, I think. On a Sunday night or a Saturday night or a Friday night when you're finishing up the week before and you're looking ahead to what next week looks like, if you want to have a great weekend, one of the things that I've learned is to close the chapter on the previous week. Write everything down that you got done, write everything down that you still haven't done, and then it just gives you permission to download from your mind over the weekend all the things that you don't want to worry about so you can focus on having fun or relaxing. And then Sunday night, maybe 7 o'clock after dinner, you come back to it and you think, what do I need to do for this to be a good week? If I did nothing else this week, what are the 3 things that'll make this a good week? And then you tick them off and you do it all again. I think the week is the ideal planning period because we get enough chances to start over and over again, but it also means that there's enough time for daily distractions and those minor emergencies to be put aside and to actually focus on what we need to do. So a weekly goal might be, I want to meditate 3 times this week because I want to focus more. Or it might be, I want to complete that marketing assignment. Or it might be, I want to apply for 3 jobs. Whatever it might be. What has to get done by the end of the week? It almost doesn't matter which day you do it on. And that's a really good place to put goals that don't quite fit in one particular day. And then, of course, you've got your daily top priorities. And the daily top priorities are hopefully the things from the weekly goals. And okay, where am I going to put it into today? If I do nothing else, what 3 things or what 1 thing will make this day a success? And I often encourage people to write this down before checking your emails, because our emails bring problems to us. Before checking social media, that's when life starts to feel overwhelming. Now, of course, we have to go and check those things, and of course, sometimes we might have to change our priorities. But the diary helps us put healthy and productive defaults into our life. So in the putting in our time blocks for well-being, we are defaulting to this is what I will do unless something gets in my way. This is what I'll do unless one of the kids is sick at school. Here's what I'll do unless my boss gives me an urgent task. It's showing you where you need to go. And the daily planner does exactly the same thing. And then there's time blocking, and we'll talk about time blocking a bit later. But it's actually blocking out periods of an hour or two. You draw a square, you say 9 to 12, and you say, in this period, I'm going to do this. And I find time blocking really valuable of an evening, where actually, for the week ahead, I try and plan out what my evenings are going to look like. Am I going out? Am I going to learn something? Am I going to meet someone? Am I going to read? If I had a big day that day, so I'm just going to give myself permission to have a glass of wine and totally relax. This is the best way to make sure that we're getting that integration right, going from one to the other, work, rest, work and rest. So that's the weekly spread. And I should have said earlier, by the way, we're going to have some Q&A at the end. We've got a whole lot of questions coming in. We've got some comments coming here. I'm just looking at this on the side. So we'll come back to these guys. So we will get to these. And please feel free to put your questions in. Phila is there to look after the chat. But please make sure you ask us a question, send us a comment, tell us what you like about the diaries, share how you use it, which might be different to what others or what even we do. Of course, the most unique and we think special thing, the thing that we spend the most time on at least every year with the diary, is what we call the monthly spread. And there's all sorts of information out there on the internet about how to improve your well-being or how to be happy or whatever it might be, but it's overwhelming. No one uses it, and the thing is they don't use it when they most need it, which is when we're tired, when we're stressed, or when we're really busy. So our idea was to put the most important things, the things that science says, the 20% of things that make 80% of the difference in your well-being into one place, not for me. We want to constantly try and bring these really valuable bits of science to life. And so the monthly spread simply is just that, a monthly short article about an important or an overlooked mental fitness idea. And the idea is that for the month that follows, you can use those ideas and those practices and those activities in your weekly goals and then your daily top priorities. And so hopefully by the end of the month, you've just got a bit more of an option for these skills. And we know that it takes between 21 to 28 days to cement a new habit. That's why the month is the perfect amount of time to learn a new skill. And at the end of each chapter, we've got the Make It Happen section. And this is designed whether you've got a little bit of time or a lot of time. The Reflect idea is just a question to ask yourself. Maybe while you're sitting on the train or while you're waiting at some point. Well, this is what I'm thinking about. And if you're a journaler, if you like using a pen or a notepad to journal, then you could actually journal about these questions. The Plan section is about, well, how do I actually take this behavior or this activity and then put it into my schedule? And so the Plan schedule is about, copying across, well, this is what I'm going to do this week. And then Act, this one probably takes the most effort, but this is something I want to change. This is something I want to do. And so that requires, reading through the background material as well and trying to apply that each and every week. Then, of course, you've got your monthly overview, and this is sort of that in-between zone between the yearly planner and between the weekly planner. And this is really great for putting those activities that matter to you into your monthly goals. It might be a project, it might be a lifestyle change, whatever it might be. And so I often put one of the ribbon bookmarkers in here. So for me, I put the white ribbon bookmarker in the month we're in, and I put the coloured ribbon bookmarker in the week we're in. And you can use this in so many flexible ways. It's just great to have a monthly planner there. This year, we've done something new, and we've put in what's called the ideal week segment. And we'd encourage you to do this straight after this webinar, or you might like to do it later in the year when you're reflecting on how 2023 is going to be a good year. And it allows you to block out some time blocks based on the schedule that you think you might have next year. You might even like to wait until February, until work or school goes back. And then you might put in, Monday morning, 6 a.m., I'm going to go for a walk. That's just what I'm going to do on a Monday morning. That's my time. Or it might be every Saturday morning, I'm going to call my grandmother. And that's just what I do. And so these are your weekly habitual things that support your connection and your well-being. So how can you use the diary? And I'd love to hear from you guys as to how you use it. You can use it as a regular appointment calendar, like most people do. I run 2 businesses with my Resilience Agenda diary. And the way I use it is I put the really important calls and meetings that I have in there, and then I use a yellow highlighter to make sure I don't miss them. And then I use a different coloured highlighter, a pink highlighter, to put in my wellbeing activities. So when I'm going to go to the gym, when I'm going to call a friend, all the things that come from the toolkit and all the things that you'll learn about throughout the year, they go into the time blocks. You could also use it to time block key chunks of time for the day for activities. One of the things we know for people who are recovering from depression, for example, is structured time is really, really valuable. And so being quite specific, between 10 and 2, I'm going to do X. Between 12 and 1, I'm going to make lunch and then eat it. Between 2 and 4, I'm going to apply for some work. Between 4 and 6, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And this can really, really help. And when you get to the end of the day and you think, hang on, tick, 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 I did all those things, it's really, really satisfying. And it just creates momentum for the next day. Some people only put their wellbeing activities in the diary, which is totally fine as well, and do everything else on their digital calendar. You might like to only put on things in your diary that you don't want anyone else knowing about. That's one way to do it as well. A lot of people use it as a daily gratitude journal. So rather than using it as a forward planner, you just simply write what you're grateful for that day. 3 things is for all the science says. And remember, be specific. A person in your life that you're grateful for, something that happened to you, a physical thing that you received, a compliment that you saw, that you heard, a beautiful thing in nature. There's so many things to look out for. And this is why that combination of mindfulness and gratitude is so important. When we are mindful, we're better able to notice the good things that are happening in our lives. And when we're grateful, we're better at cementing them. So it makes us more likely to notice them next time. And then it's just this upward spiral. When to use the diary? I think this is a really, really cool slide. There's a concept called habit stacking, which helps people create or make new habits. Now, there's a few people here today who have bought diaries 2 or 3 years in a row. So I'm sure you guys have got certain ideas, and I'd love to hear from you. I'm just looking across here. I see Heather uses the diary to note the hours that she works, especially if you work shift work. Do a double check with your pay slip. That's absolutely right. Note your appointments, and then you can put some future goals in there as well. So that's really good, Heather. But habit stacking is about tacking on a new behavioral change onto something you already do. The science shows us that starting a new habit or changing a habit or quitting a habit is really hard. But if we keep the routine and just do something else at the same time, then it's much easier to stack the habit on. So what we often say is when you are brushing your teeth, that's a great time to be grateful. And then you can't say, I don't have time to be grateful, or I don't have time for gratitude, because you do it for 2 minutes while you're brushing your teeth. You might like to reflect on your mindset as you go through a doorway. So I've got this practice where whenever I go through a doorway, I take a deep breath, and that centers me. Whenever I go up or down stairs, that's my gratitude practice. What have I got to be grateful for as I'm climbing up a stair? Just a simple thing. And for most people, they have a morning coffee or a morning cup of tea or a morning juice. And a lot of people, when they're doing that, they are multitasking, they're checking their emails, and that special coffee, that ritual of the coffee, sort of just disappears. And you're like, I missed it. What I love to do is to get my coffee, get my diary, open it up, and think, okay, that's what I wrote this week for my top goal. I forgot about that. I was going to do this today, but actually this is more important. And then I write in my top priorities. It takes 5 or 10 minutes, and it's such a valuable way to make sure that you're doing the things today that you should be doing. The other thing I do is I always use the diary before checking my emails, before my mind's all scattered. I want to have a direction that I'm going. I think it's always a really good idea to close the day. So you might like to set tomorrow's priorities today. And there's a guy called Cal Newport who writes a lot about digital wellbeing, which is a theme that you'll know we're really big on here at RA. He talks about the wind down ritual from work and how closing your laptop or closing your diary or filing your papers at the end of the day is a great way to just sort of say goodbye to the day, and so you won't be tempted to come back to it later unless you really need to. And then I think one of the most important things that we all need to do, especially if we want to get a good night's sleep, is to download our mind. And this is why we make writing products. We've got our notebook combos, we've got our pens, and we make our diaries, because our minds are designed for having thoughts, not for holding them. This is not a storage drive. That's actually a bad metaphor. It's not a storage drive, it's a place to have thoughts. They need to go somewhere. And we need to structure these thoughts, and we need to organize our mind each day. And so before bed, what are all the things you're going to be lying in bed worrying about? Write them down. Give yourself permission to forget them, because that's what worry is. It's like, hang on, if I forget about this, something bad's going to happen. Whereas if you write things down, it's like, I can come back to this in the morning. And it's such a relief. And as you'll see from the February chapter in the diary, we're really big on sharing this idea that just because it's happening in our mind doesn't mean it's true. And what downloading our thoughts does, by putting them on paper, it allows us to separate ourselves from them. If it's on paper, it's not in you. And that separation is really, really good for when we want to go and reframe, because we can see that it's an object. A thought is just an object. It's external to your mind. Okay, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to dismiss it? Am I going to reframe it? Am I going to accept it? That's all the skills you'll learn about in your diary. So I would love to ask if you've got any questions. We've got a whole lot of people on the call, which is fantastic, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more joining us later on. Who else has a question or a comment? I know Lucy said, this is my second year. I'm keen to know if there is an online platform to keep each other accountable and provide support. We are working on it, Lucy. Thank you very much for the question. We are working on it. Not yet, but we have had this request from people over time to create more of an online offering. We wanted to create something really unique with the diaries, but of course we're working on that platform as well. And if you are, by the way, if you are involved in the workplace, in mental health in your workplace, whether you're a mental health first aider or whether you're in HR or safety or wellbeing or anything like that, feel free to jump on over to Mental Fitness Hub, which is an online training platform for workplace mental fitness. That's something we do as well. Some people know about our podcast, others don't. We now have season 2 underway. This is totally free and you can share this with your friends. This is where you can learn all about the ideas. We go a bit deeper into the ideas and we try and match up the guests to talk about chapters of the diary. So Patrick McEwen, for example, talks about breathing. Ellen Langer is the mother of mindfulness. Bridget Schulte is all about work-life balance or work-life integration and preventing overwhelm. Sean Talbot, how we can use nutrition and food to basically improve our mental health. There's also an older episode with Felice Jacka, which I think is an absolute must listen. And then Massimo Paolucci is a Stoic expert. That's a wonderful conversation. I really encourage you to listen to that. So check out that. Now, I know a lot of you have already bought your diaries, so please don't be disappointed by this, but we have a webinar 15 code here. So if you want any more for gifts for Christmas, they make a great gift. For 24 hours only, you'll get 15% off. And this is only for the people who are on this webinar. And so this is where you can get in touch with us. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're building our LinkedIn profile, and we're going to actually have some really interesting stuff coming up on YouTube over the next couple of days. But with that, does anyone have any other questions? I just want to run through some of these comments here. So Kerry has said, this is my first year. The practices are challenging on my own, hoping this diary will support building habits. That is exactly what it's for. Pettit Kelly, the podcast, I hope you mean that's our I hope that's our podcast, Kelly, but podcasts in general are brilliant, but hopefully ours too. Lynette, hey, 2 diaries. That's actually not a bad idea. Talk to me after about that. That's actually a really good idea. I think that's actually not a bad idea. I've actually tried using 2 diaries in the past. One just to journal in. It can work. So I think that's a really good idea. Your podcast. Oh, thanks, Kelly. Heather. Oh yeah, we've met Heather. Maria's been very grateful there. Thank you. I don't know Mr. Smith, but thank you very much for joining us today. I hope it's been valuable. We've got maybe 1 or 2 minutes before we finish up. I really want to thank you for your time. There's the code there, webinar 15. Webinar 15 will get you a code just for the next 24 hours. We will have a replay of this, so if you'd like to watch it again, if you'd like to, or any sections of it, if you'd like to share it with anyone, we're going to have a link on YouTube and on our website. But the most important thing that I want to say today is thank you so much for your support of Resilience Agenda. We know in these uncertain and tough times, spending your hard-earned money to support our mission is a real honour for us. And so we'd encourage you to apply what's in the diaries to your life, share the messaging, If you need, if you want to get in touch with us by any means, you're welcome to do that on our website. We will have the link, Marella, so we're going to share that once we edit it all up and take out all my mistakes. We'll have that online over the next couple of days, and we'll make sure we share that with you as well. Bridget, joining us from Dubai, if I'm not wrong. So thank you so much for your support as well. We really, really thank you so much. Share the message of mental fitness. We look forward to providing more ideas and content and value for you as a part of the mental fitness community. And thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. Thank you.